birth mother was really young when I was born, and maybe, I still have a chance to be able to find her. I had no idea that I even had siblings. I mean, I never dawned on me. I wanted him to know that that wasn't why I did it. I just wanted to know my story and where I came from and to sort of complete my own self.
Jane says she was placed with an adoptive family that treated her really well. They had a biological son after they adopted her, so she grew up with a little brother. She didn't start searching for her birth family until after her adoptive parents had passed away. She got her original birth certificate from the state, but the agency she was adopted through would only give her non-identifying information. Jane was able to connect the dots and find both her maternal and paternal families. She's only a few years into her reunion, but she's had positive interactions with everyone so far. Here is my interview with Jane.
So at what age were you adopted and where were you adopted from?
I was adopted at 10 months old, and I was adopted from Wilmington, Delaware.
Were you in foster care before that?
I was for 10 months.
And did you end up growing up in the same area that you were adopted from?
Yes, I did. I still live in that same area.
And did you always know that you were adopted, or was there a point that they had told you?
I always knew. We talked about it, and my mom and dad, I guess, did the right, age appropriate thing by telling me certain things along the way. And I always knew that I was adopted, but at, I guess, about 8 years old, my mom told me what my birth name was. And she told me that my birth mother was really young and couldn't care for me. So she said that they couldn't have children. So they wanted to adopt, and they got me, and they're very happy to have me.
Were you an only child, or were there other children in your adoptive family?
I had one brother. My mom got pregnant soon after they got me. My mom got pregnant. So I have a brother that's biological to my parents.
What was it like growing up in your adoptive family?
I had a really nice childhood. I never felt any different. I always felt like they cared the same about us both. My mom let me share in, helping to take care of my brother, because at the point where he was born, I was about 2, and they included me in helping and, going to get things. And I just had a really, really nice family life with them up until my mom left when I was 14. So up until then, it was just a really, really nice, fairy tale child.
So when she left, was she close by? Like, did you get to maintain a relationship with her?
I did. She lived about 6 minutes away. So she wasn't far, and I did have a relationship with her. It was a really bad time in that time when she left, but I did have conversations with her, and we got back to semi, agreement that it happened, and we were just going to move on and try to have a relationship because she was my mom.
Mm-hmm. When you decided you wanted to start searching, what was the reason?
Well, I guess I was in my mid 50s, and both of my parents had passed away, and I'm not sure if that's the real reason for it, but I did think to myself, I wonder if I would be okay, die not knowing. And it just sort of made me think about that. And then I was like, well, my birth mother was really young when I was born, and maybe, I still have a chance to be able to find her.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think much about a birth father. I always had this vision of someone out there was my birth mother, but I didn't know. And so I thought, well, let me just start to put the idea in my head about seeing what I can find out. And at the time, the internet was coming alive with stuff. And I had tried before, little things, but I didn't really get very far.
Did your adoptive family ever tell you they'd be supportive of you searching?
My mom always said, if you ever want to search, I would be happy to help you.
Did they have any information about your adoption or your birth?
They did. They did. My mom at one point gave me a folder of all of they went through a private adoption through the agency, and they had an attorney handling it. And I have all the notes and all my mom and dad's notes, all the notes from the attorney to my parents about, how long it would be, letters from the agency saying, it won't be long now. We found someone for you. We found a baby for you. So I had all this information minus my information.
Right.
Personal information.
So did you attempt to get your records from the state? or the
I did.
agency?
I did. In 2018, I called the Children's Bureau of Delaware and asked, or the vital statistics, and asked if I could have a copy of my original birth certificate. And so, I had to pay for that. And they said, it'd take a little bit of time. So I waited for that and I got a copy of that.
So you were able to get your original birth certificate with your birth mother's name on it.
Yes.
And was there a father listed or just a mother?
No, just a mother.
So you had her name. Was it easy to find her after that?
Well, I Googled it right away. I got my birth certificate in the mail and I was like in the car and I opened up the letter and I saw the birth certificate and I right away Googled her and I didn't see anything. And I was like, well, that's weird. Then I went on to Facebook and I tried and I couldn't find any real information about her.
Hmm.
So then after that, I think I reached out to the agency, which had changed names, but I thought it's in Delaware. So let me try to see if they are still the same or still have records. And I called them and they were the correct agency. And I asked, could I have some information? And they said, unfortunately, everything is sealed, but you can apply for your non-identifying information, which is what I did.
So once you had the non-identifying information, was it easier to narrow down who she was?
It was. I found through an obituary though that she had passed away. It was my who would be my grandfather, my birth mother's father, listed. She was one of 7, and it listed the siblings, and then it said, that she had passed away before him.
How did you first reach out to the family?
I went through the agency because I wasn't sure how to do it. I had names because in the obituary I had names, and then I looked up their addresses. So I reached out to the agency and I said, would you be able to, send letters to them? And the person that I worked with said, yes, that as many of the addresses that you have, we can send letters. And, sometimes they answer and sometimes they have a lot of questions. And so we did that. And then it was probably like 4 days, the 4 that I reached out to responded.
That's cool. I didn't know agencies would do that kind of thing for you.
Yeah, well, you have to pay for it, but it was
Oh.
like, they do letters for you and they open up a case and they put you in the file and they do certain searches, but not any information that pertains to your birth mother or names of any, like I had her name, but they wouldn't give me any more information than the non-identifying information. I had to find it all myself.
Yeah, I guess that was crazy that I thought they would do something out of the kindness of their hearts.
Well,
Once you were able to get in touch with them through the letters, did you go and meet them in person? Was it a phone call? How did that go?
Well, in the meantime, I had done 23andMe and Ancestry. And in 23andMe, I never got any close relatives. I had like a lot of, distant cousins and things like that. But in, I think, 2020, I did Ancestry and I had gotten close relative. And I was reviewing that. I was looking that over and and said I had a private message. And in that private message, the person said, are you the one that reached out to the agency? And I just thought that it was one of my birth mother's siblings. And I said that I was, and she said, well, I'm your half sister. Well, I had no idea that I even had siblings. I mean, it never dawned on me. All I wanted to find out was if my birth mother was alive and if I could meet her. But it turns out that my birth mother had 2 daughters and a son. And I have met them all, and I have a really nice relationship with the oldest daughter.
That's cool. Did anybody from your mother's family know about you being born? I know you had said she was young at the time.
They did, because I guess she must have discussed it when she was older with them. And I've met 4 of the 6 siblings, her siblings. I've met them and I have relationships with them. I met my Uncle Jimmy. My birth mother's twin has just passed away this past December, but I did get to meet him, which was I was so happy to have met him because that seemed like the closest person to her that I could meet.
Yeah. So when you were with them, did you notice any similarities in looks or personality that you were able to identify?
I did. I did. I have a lot of common interests and things with my sister, but looking wise, I looked at their legs and I'm like, wow, those are my legs. Even my uncle, when I met him, he had shorts on and I was like, I had a picture taken with him and I looked at the picture later and I was like, wow, we have the same legs. It's interesting because I never was able to compare any, I never had mirroring or anything with anybody.
Yeah. Did you share any physical features with your adoptive family?
I
Yeah.
did. I looked a lot like my mom. And I guess that's for the time, because I was a baby scoop era adoptee. I was born in 1963. And I think for the time, they try to match you best that they could with your adoptive parents, and never really got anybody that said, oh, you don't look like your parents. And I always felt a part of them. So it really wasn't an issue.
Yeah. So you met your birth mother's family first, and then did you start thinking about that there's somebody else out there, your birth father?
Well, I had talked to the agency about it. I said, can you give me my birth father's name, or is there any in the records? Is there anything? And they said, we can't. And so, like in March of, I think, 2022, I got 23andMe, close relative. And it turns out that it was my half brother on the paternal side. I figured that because I had met everybody else. And so I called the agency and said, oh, I just found out that I have a half brother
Mm.
on the paternal side. Can I reach out to him? And they said, no, they asked me his name, and then they said, we'll see if it matches the name that's in the file. So they knew him. They knew his name.
Oh.
And yeah, but my birth mother didn't write it on the birth certificate, but it was in the file. So she wasn't allowed to tell me. But when I asked if it was, I had the name, I gave her the name. She said that's him. And I said, well, can you reach out to him then? So she sent him a letter.
Oh, okay. So even though you had already been in contact with his son,
Well, I
right?
didn't. No, I didn't contact him.
Oh.
Because I wanted to find out. I wanted to do everything right. I didn't want to, mess anything up. And I wasn't sure if he even knew about me. So I was too afraid. I thought, let me just go through the agency like I had been going through with my birth mother. So they sent him a letter and didn't hear back for 8 months or something. And then the woman I was working with at the agency called me and she said, Jane, I think we need to close your case because they told me you can keep it open for 2 years. And
Mm.
so I said, all right. She said, but if we hear anything, we'll revisit that when and if it happens. We'll open it back up. And I was like, oh, I don't know what kind of
Mm.
loopholes or whatever they have to go through, but
Yeah.
whatever. So a week after that, she called me. It was a Friday afternoon. She called me and she said, Jane, I just heard from your birth father.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And she says, yeah, he wanted to know a couple of things. Can you just write a paragraph of these certain things that she asked? She said, I think I know them, but I need to have them in writing so I can email them to him. And they were things like, why did I wait so long? How did I know it was him? And what did I want? And I was like,
Hmm.
well, I just want to know you. And I waited so long because there wasn't really DNA or anything. And they told me I could never find you. And so within 45 minutes, she asked me if he could have my phone number. And I said, sure. And she gave him my phone number and he called me.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it was wild. It really was really interesting.
Did you eventually get to meet your siblings from him? How many children did he have?
He has two, a boy and a girl. And I did get to meet them last summer. I met my birth father in January of last year. And then in September, they live in Seattle, and I went out to Seattle to visit them all.
Do you have lasting relationships with any of them? I mean, I know you had said that you had a sister from your birth mother, your oldest sister.
I do. I have a relationship with all of my birth mother's siblings, and we do Christmas Eve. We do like a Pollyanna thing with that side of the family. We've done it for the last 2 years, which, I don't talk to them very, the brother and sister, the other brother and sister, I don't talk to very much, but I do see them. And, it's nice. It's a nice, there's no awkwardness or anything like that with them.
So you told me before we started that you recently reached out to your birth father because you said you had gone and visited him and stayed with him and it was a comfortable situation, but you still sometimes wondered like how he felt. So you said you had reached out to him and just kind of asked him that. Now, a lot of people are afraid to ask people what they're thinking, not even just adoptees, people in general. But so you sent him a letter and you basically asked him, how he felt. Was it how he felt about the whole situation?
It was sort of about that, but it was more telling him that I understood how he felt in finding out, because I think he was really shocked. He was shocked that it was 60 years before he met me, and he didn't really know about me. He suspected, he said, but knowing and suspecting are two different things. And waiting 60 years to hear from somebody that you're going along with your life and all is okay, and it felt like it was like that wasn't my purpose. And I wanted him to know that that wasn't why I did it. I just wanted to know my story and where I came from and to sort of complete my own self. And so I wrote him a letter and said that I was empathetic, and I just felt that he, I didn't know really how he felt, but I knew that he must have been in shock. And so told him that I really enjoyed being around them and loved meeting them, and it was just a nice time.
Yeah. So he didn't know for sure that you were born. Had your birth mother gone to an unwed mother's home?
Yes.
Okay. So he just never saw her again?
Yes, he tried to find her. He went into the Air Force, and someone had said something about they thought she was pregnant, but he never really knew for sure, 100%. So he went in the Air Force, and when he came home on leave, he said he tried to find her, but he couldn't find her. And I'm guessing it was because she was in the home for unwed mothers at the time.
Right. After finding your biological family, do you still have close relationships with anyone in your adoptive family?
I do. I have my brother and his wife and my two nieces and nephew. I have a very nice relationship with all of them. I had a very small family. My dad only had one sister, and my mom was an only child. So I have one that's remaining. We get along very well. And I just recently told her the story of this whole thing. And she said she was really, really happy for me, and that she's so glad that I told her, and that she thinks that my parents would be thrilled that I found my birth family. So I feel good about this whole thing.
When you did the DNA test, did you find out anything that you hadn't expected or anything interesting about either family?
Yes. My mom always said she thought I asked my ethnicity because I guess I must have been doing a school project or something. And I asked, what was I? And she said, oh, well, I think you're Irish. Well, the first thing that shows up on my DNA was that I'm 27% Italian. And I was like, oh my God, like I had no clue. So no real surprises, but just that I find it interesting in finding out all of who you are.
Yeah. Are you into doing family trees? Have you tried to trace your family back at all?
No, I haven't. I've just been dealing with all of this. Like this was like all at once. I mean, this was like in the last couple of years, I've had all of this, and I've been interested in it. And my birth father's wife does it. And she said that when I found them, that she just added me to their tree.
Hmm.
So I guess if I'm interested in it at all, I can find out that side.
How do you feel like your life has changed now that you have all these people in your life? And do you feel like it was a missing piece of the puzzle that you needed?
I feel so much less angst and anger. I had like anger issues that I had no idea why. And I feel so calm inside. And I feel like I now know where I came from, and I know that I was in the right place growing up. And I just feel like a completeness to me.
Yeah. Were there any health concerns that you had learned of that you would have never known about if you hadn't gone out looking for your biological family?
There wasn't too much, but I learned that my birth mother died of lung cancer, and that her twin also had lung cancer.
Hmm.
So that concerns me, but I'm not a smoker and I take care of myself. So, I mean, all my life I had just like had my own baseline. So I feel like there's lots of different things to that. It's not only genetic.
Right. It is good to know, though.
Right.
What advice would you give people who may be thinking about going out and looking for their own birth families?
I would say the first thing is do it, but be understanding and have some compassion for them, for your birth family, because they're just finding out. And if they've been looking for you, that's great. But if not, then give them some time and some space, and I would just say go for it and enjoy what you find. And if they don't want to know you, then you've done you've reached out, and you've done it for yourself, and you've completed your own what you wanted to do. But I would just say be kind.
Yeah, you can only do so much. You can't make people talk to you. That's what I've found out.
Right. Right.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's really great. I love sharing my story, and I'm glad to be here.
Okay, well, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Thank you.
If you have experienced an adoption reunion and would like to speak about it, please contact me at whathappensafterpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out the show's Instagram to see pictures of my guests. Listen next time to find out what happens after. Thanks for listening.